Sunaina and Priya Kishori, Deepa, just keep an eye as soon as Maharaj joins, you'll see.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I think he has joined us.
Maharaj is here now. Okay. Maharaj is on screen. Hare Krishna Maharaj. You're muted, Maharaj. You're on mute. Unmute yourself, Maharaj. Or let me see if we can do that. Can you do that, Sunaina? Unmute, Maharaj. Let me try. Oh, okay. Now, all right. Now, Maharaj, you're unmuted now.
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much for making time to join us and give us your wonderful association on this program that we do. This online program is referred to as ISKCON Institute for Higher Education. And we started it last August with two of the devotees that are here, Deepa and Sunaina. It started as a house program online, and then both of them facilitated it by getting their friends and family. It grew from there. So,
Sunaina from Joburg.
No, she's from Durban.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Excuse me, Sunaina.
So I'm sure in the course, at some time all of these devotees will meet with you, I hope very soon in the future. So I want to welcome everybody to our program. And if you're joining us for the first time, please feel very welcomed. And we're happy that you are here with us. We meet every Sunday at this time at 4 p.m. to go through a systematic overview of Srimad Bhagavatam, having done an overview on Bhagavad Gita last year. Well, first part of this year. So, His Holiness Bhakti Caitanya Swami Maharaj, who had the pleasure of meeting from the time I've come to ISKCON, is the chairperson of the executive committee of the governing body commission of ISKCON. Governing body commission is the administrative and spiritual, managerial and spiritual committee that oversees all the affairs of ISKCON. So we are fortunate to have the head of International Society for Krishna Consciousness worldwide to give us his great association today. Maharaj is also the GBC for South Africa, and he's head of the Sannyasi Committee. He originally is from New Zealand, and then from 1973, he joined the Hare Krishna movement. And it was our great fortune that Maharaj came to South Africa in the 80s, and here he served as our temple president in the Cato Ridge ashram, and he was personally involved in the fundraising for our temple. Imagine that, Maharaj was on the street distributing the books and the paintings just to raise funds for our temple. So we're very indebted to Maharaj's efforts for that. And he served as our regional secretary from 1985, and now, subsequent to joining the GBC in 1998 and serving in various parts of Africa, as well as the Eastern Bloc countries like Russia, Latvia, Western Siberia, Lithuania. Maharaj spends time in South Africa, and when he was able, he was traveling all over the world, delivering seminars classes in our headquarters. Marge is now also, because of the online facilities we have, Marge has presented Bhakti Shastri degree and has had one of the largest number, more than 400 people graduating in the last session on Bhakti Shastri. One of the largest numbers that ever together. So, as we can see, Marge is very well renowned for his astute presentation of scripture. So, today we would like you to please listen carefully, as we have learnt in Bhagavad Gita that Tadvidi Pranipatena, that we should listen to the Tattvadarshis, the self-realized souls, and inquire from them submissively. And if you get a chance, we'll render service to Marge. Marge, it is our great honor to have you. We hand this over to you, Hare Krishna. And
Hare
I will can stop the share, so you'll have. I've just put this up, and I can stop the share, and then we can have you on full screen.
Can I see the devotees, or is it?
That would be good. If those of you can show yourselves, please do so. Marge would like to engage with you.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Even if you just do that for a minute or two, please do so.
Rasa Raj, Prikishore, and Radharaman and Sulochana, Gayatri, Radharani, and Nope, oh, Bhanumati and Meena, Navkishore, Hare Krishna, Suren and Nope, Harish, Rasa Raj, and who's this? Priscilla, Darshan. Oh, and who's this? Serena. Haribol Serena. And who's this one? Tanya. Haribol Tanya. Okay. Anyway, great to see you. Yeah.
Please
nice.
just show yourselves in video for a second or so, a minute or so. Marge has requested, so please reciprocate.
Just to see who's who. Oh, it's Chiksoli, Hare Krishna. Wow. You sent Daksha, Rienta, Haribol, Sadhu, Sunena. Oh, that's Sunena. Hare Krishna Sunena. Yes, okay. Prinolan, Haribol. I remember you. Shanal, yeah? Hare Krishna. Okay, anyway, that's fine. Who's a Kishori Radhe, Haribol, and Radharani. Okay, thank you. Nice to see you. I mean, you can stay like that, whatever is the right way or best way, preferred way. So, okay, devotees, we are going to go into the 4th chapter of the 2nd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And I don't really expect we'll get through the whole 4th chapter, but we'll go as far as we go, because we don't want to just race through. You know, there's so much there, just so much information, very deep and very beautiful. So we'll go as far as we can, and then Smita Krishna Prabhu, you're in the very capable hands of Smita Krishna Prabhu. and he'll take you on as he's been doing, and you'll just dive deeper and deeper into the ocean of Srimad Bhagavatam. But for the time being, here we go. We are now, we're going to go into the fourth chapter. Let me begin by chanting a few mantras just to set the mood a little bit and get some transcendental vibration into the atmosphere. So first of all, let us chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Very good. So now let us just offer our pranams. First of all to Prabhupada, then Panchatattva, then Lord Krishna, and then all the devotees. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadeshatarne Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyas cha kripas sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Panchatattva ki jai, Shri Radha Krishna ki jai, all the devotees ki jai, all of you ki jai, Hari Bol. So here we go, devotees. We're going into the fourth chapter. And Srimad Bhagavatam, you know, it's just like an ocean. Actually, Baladev Vijabhushan, Srila Baladev Vijabhushan, one of our great acharyas, he said about studying Bhagavad Gita, he says that Lord Krishna put me on a boat and he pushed me out into the ocean of Bhagavad Gita. And then I was floating along. Suddenly the boat sank into the ocean of Bhagavad Gita. And then it became like a submarine, just going deeper and deeper into the ocean of Bhagavad Gita. And I was finding more and more jewels in the understandings. And now I don't want to come out. That's what he said about Bhagavad Gita. And Srimad Bhagavatam is even more so. It's even more like that. More oceanic. So here we see the fourth chapter. There's 25 verses. The chapter title is The Process of Creation. As we go through, you will notice that, well, there's not really any discussion about the process of creation in this particular chapter, but it's just that the scene is being set. There's definitely going to be discussion about the process of creation. But this chapter, the 25 verses, they're just setting the scene for that. You know, when we do, at least when I do, and I assume with Smita Krishna Prabhu, who's very expert, and you're so fortunate to be in his transcendental hands. So when we do these overviews, generally we break the chapters into groups of verses, because you get some number of verses, they're discussing a particular subject. And then that little discussion stops, and the next so many verses, they're discussing some other little bit different subject. And then that discussion stops, and then another discussion of something a little different starts. So this applies, of course, to this fourth chapter. And the first section, so to speak, the first section is from verse 1 until up to and including verse 5. At least this is how I see it. From verse 1 to verse 5, there's, you could say, a particular theme, a very specific theme. And then after that verse 5, the theme definitely changes. And then from about 6 till, anyway, we'll see it's 9 or 10 or thereabouts, then there's this different theme which is being discussed. So let's go through these first verses, this first section then. First section, let's go through it from verse 1 to verse 5. So what happens is that, well, Sutta Goswami is speaking. Sutta Goswami is speaking. I assume Smita Krishna Prabhu has explained how the Srimad Bhagavatam came about, that Shukadev Goswami instructed Maharaj Parikshit, and Sutta Goswami, so there's a different devotee. You got Shukadev speaking to Parikshit Maharaj, and there at the same place, hearing it all, was Sutta Goswami. So then Sutta Goswami, having heard it all, he then went traveling, and he ended up in a place called Naimisharanya. Naimisharanya is still there, actually. It's a kind of foresty area, at least it was. And when Sutta Goswami arrived at Naimisharanya, he found a group of sages there, saintly people, and like philosophers, you could say. They were there. The leader of that group was Shonaka Rishi. And Shonaka and those sages in Naimisharanya, they were trying to do a big fire sacrifice to slow down the beginning of Kali Yuga. I assume you're aware that it's Kali Yuga now. It's the worst time in the different cycles of time, different ages in the material world. The worst age, the worst period is Kali Yuga. And we're all here in, Kali Yuga basically means the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And I think you may have noticed how in the last so many days in South Africa, particularly Durban, and also Joburg, how there's been a lot of quarrel, right? Sure, what can you say? So it's definitely Kali Yuga. It's first class Kali Yuga. Anyway, so we have these two scenarios. Shukadev Goswami is speaking to Parikshit, or rather has spoken to. And now Sutta Goswami is reciting that, what he heard when Shukadev instructed Parikshit. Sutta Goswami is instructing that to the sages of Naimisharanya, headed by Shonaka. So here we see in verse 1, it begins. Let me just read the Sanskrit of verse 1. I won't read the Sanskrit of all the verses, but let's just read this one. Sutaruvacha Vyasakirti vachas tatvanishchayam atmana upadarya Krishne otareya satim vyadhat. Which means, Sutta Goswami said, Maharaj Parikshit, the son of Uttara, after hearing the speeches of Shukadev Goswami, which were all about the truth of the self, applied his concentration faithfully upon Lord Krishna. Yeah, well, that's a sort of foundational point, you could say, that when we're engaged in Krishna consciousness, when we're doing different activities in Krishna consciousness, we should concentrate, we should focus our attention upon Lord Krishna. Because if we do that, well, there are many things, actually, if we do that. There are many benefits, you could say. But in this particular regard here, the thing is that what's going to be said is that how Maharaj Parikshit is really qualified to hear these things. How Parikshit is qualified, that's in verses 2, 3, and 4. And then in verse 5, how, anyway, it's basically Parikshit is so qualified. And then in verse 5, Parikshit says that Shukadev, you are so qualified. You are so qualified to speak for different reasons. So what we'll do, we'll go through these few verses one by one and see how these points are presented. First of all, beginning with verse 2 and then verse 2, 3, and 4 it is. The qualification, the position, the nature of Maharaj Parikshit, 2, 3, and 4, and then verse 5, the qualification of Shukadev. So Parikshit, he is qualified to hear this message. And as we see in verse 2, let's just read the translation. Maharaj Parikshit, as a result of his wholehearted attraction for Lord Krishna, was able to give up all deep-rooted affection for his personal body, his wife, his children, his palace, his animals, like horses and elephants, his treasury house, his friends and relatives, and his undisputed kingdom. So this is talking then, as we said, about the qualification of Parikshit to hear. He is qualified. He he will be able to hear nicely and really take it in and really absorb the message because he has certain qualifications. And as we just read, that he's qualified to hear because he's so deeply, wholeheartedly attracted to Krishna. Therefore, he's qualified to hear. And he is so wholeheartedly attracted that he was able to give up all these things. And, it's arguable that there is a type of hierarchy, these different things he was able to give up. I mean, not necessarily absolutely, but, it's arguable that first thing, what is the first thing that people are attached to? It's their own bodies. And then after their body, what's the next thing they're most attracted to? Usually their spouse. In the case of Parikshit, he had a wife. And then his children. And then his palace. And then his animals and various other things. Like I said, it's arguable there's a hierarchy. It's not necessarily absolutely like that, but, it could, to some degree, we could see it like that. So the thing is that for people to become detached from these things to the degree that Parikshit Maharaj was detached, boy, that's unusual. And he was able to be so detached because he was so attached to Krishna. In other words, if you're going to become detached from something, you can only really do that by becoming attached to something else. You can't just, this is one of the points in Krishna consciousness, that it's very hard just to become detached or attached to nothing. It's really hard. There's a verse in Bhagavad Gita. Let me just get out my Bhagavad Gita. Here comes my Bhagavad Gita. And it's verse, just a sec. I'll tell you, it's in chapter 2. And it's verse, what is it? 60. Oh, what is it? Oh, here it is. Oh, no, it's not. What verse is it? Here it is. It's verse 59. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 59. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva navartate. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. This is a very important point in Krishna consciousness. You can't just become detached without becoming attached to anything else. That's what the impersonalists say, that you just become detached from everything so that you are eventually attached to nothing. But in Krishna consciousness, our point is, and it's being drawn out here in the second verse, and we'll see in verses 3 and 4 also, that Parikshit was able, because he was wholeheartedly attracted to Krishna, therefore he was able to give up his attachments and attractions to even these things which are very, generally people are very, very attached to: family, money. And Prabhupada gave an example to illustrate the principle. The example is that if I have 10 rands and you have 100 rands, and you say to me, I've got my 10 rands, and you say to me, listen, I will give you my 100 rands if you will give me your 10 rands. You get the idea? The person is saying, he'll give us his 100 rands, but we must give our 10 rands. Then, of course, we'll be happy to give up the 10 rands in order to get 100. It's obvious. But if that person says, that we should give him our 10 rands and he will give us nothing at all, then we're not going to really want to give up the 10 rands, are we? Even though it's not a lot. But we're not going to just give it up. But if he says, I'll give you 100, and then we must just give 10, we'll be happy to give up the 10. So similarly, in Krishna consciousness, there's so much nectar. It's incredible. It's absolutely amazing how much nectar there is in Krishna consciousness. And as you start tasting that nectar, then it becomes easier and easier to give up more and more of just ordinary material things. This is the principle of the higher taste. But we have to cultivate that higher taste through chanting nicely, serving nicely, associating nicely, all these different types of things, doing them very nicely. If we do them nicely, we get the higher taste, and then to give up whatever material things have been meaning a lot to you, it'll be easy. It'll be really easy. But if there's no higher taste, well, then it won't even really be possible. So this is the thing about Parikshit. He was so attached to Krishna, and the pleasure he got from his relationship with Krishna was just so amazing that it made the pleasure that he was getting from his family and his money and his property, his kingdom, etc., the pleasure he was getting from Krishna consciousness made the pleasures he was getting from those material things just seem like nonsense, just like rubbish. And rubbish, of course, you just throw it away. So that's an interesting point, isn't it? It's a really important point. And he became, he was so much attached to Krishna, Maharaj Parikshit, that, I'm sure you know the story that he was cursed to die in 7 days by the bite of a snake bird. So therefore he went to the banks of the Ganges or the Yamuna, and Shukadev came and spoke to him 24/7, literally. 24 hours a day, for 7 days and 7 nights. And you know what? As Shukadev was speaking this whole Srimad Bhagavatam, Maharaj Parikshit never slept. Sometimes when we're giving class, sometimes a devotee falls asleep. It may have happened to you, or you may have seen it happen, something like that. So, these things happen sometimes if we get tired or if we get distracted. But Maharaj Parikshit never fell asleep. Not only didn't he fall asleep, he never felt sleepy, and he didn't eat, and he did not drink for 7 days and 7 nights. It's amazing, isn't it? We could not do that. We would not be able to do that. But he did. And Shukadev continued speaking the whole time for 7 days and 7 nights, because he's also equally qualified in Krishna consciousness. And he didn't say, let's take a break and have a nap for a while or something. He just kept on. And the reason is because they were so attached to Krishna that as soon as Shukadev started speaking about Krishna, as soon as Parikshit started hearing about Krishna, they just became completely, you could say, electrified and just totally absorbed in chanting in the case of Shukadev and hearing in the case of Parikshit. So, in fact, Srila Prabhupada said on numerous occasions that one can understand how one is advancing in Krishna consciousness by seeing, on one hand, how we're becoming attached to hearing and chanting about Krishna and serving Krishna, and on the other hand, we're losing our attraction to all the ordinary things. So in verses 3 and 4, the same theme continues. Parikshit, how Maharaj Parikshit was so qualified due to his Krishna consciousness, and same idea that he became so renounced effortlessly. He didn't have to make a big effort to break his attachments somehow, but his interests, his material interests, just fell away. So let's read verses 3 and 4. I'll just read the translation. O great sages, the great soul Maharaj Parikshit, constantly wrapped in thought of Lord Krishna, knowing well of his imminent death, renounced all sorts of fruitive activities, namely acts of religion, economic development, and sense gratification, and thus fixed himself firmly in his natural love for Krishna, and asked all these questions exactly as you are asking me. So, as you are asking me, Sutta Goswami is speaking, as we said, to the sages in Naimisharanya, and those sages have been asking him questions. If you've been following these Sunday programs with Smita Krishna Prabhu, then you would have seen how the sages in Naimisharanya were asking questions of Sutta. So in verse 2, Sutta Goswami said that Parikshit, because of his attachment to Krishna, became free from attachment to family members and wealth, etc. These types of things, his palace, his kingdom. Here, it's a little different. It's the same principle, but some different examples of things which oftentimes or usually people are very attached to. But Maharaj Parikshit was not, because of his attachment to Krishna. He just lost interest in these things. So mentioned here was his interest in, in fruitive activities. First of all, materialistic religion, then economic development coming from materialistic religion, and then sense gratification coming from having acquired different material things through economic development. In Sanskrit, those three are called dharma, artha, and kama. Not karma, K-A-R-M-A, but kama, K-A-M-A. So dharma in this context means materialistic religion. Artha means economic development, like material acquisition. And kama means sense gratification. There's a sequence there. There's a sequence. In materialistic religion, that first you do some prayer for getting some material things. Then you get the material things as like answering your prayers. And when you've got the material things, then you enjoy them. This is the process of materialistic religion, which of course is quite different from the process of Krishna consciousness. In Krishna consciousness, we serve Krishna, we chant Hare Krishna, we do all these things, but the result we get is we get bliss from being Krishna conscious, and then we get inspiration from that to do more for Krishna, and then more. And Prabhupada said for the advanced devotee, 24 hours a day, 24 hours in a day is not enough. The devotee wants to do so much for Krishna. So this is a little different. It's the same principle, but it's a little different from the idea in verse 2. The idea in verse 2 was, just the very grossly material things of family members, money, kingdom, and all that. And this is a little more subtle, materialistic religion. So devotees, we don't engage in materialistic religion of praying to get material things, getting them, and just enjoying them. As devotees, we just try to please Krishna. So Parikshit was like that. He renounced all those things because he was constantly wrapped in thought of Krishna. And therefore his natural love for Krishna developed and became stronger and stronger. And we'll find that if we engage nicely in Krishna consciousness, if we chant nicely and serve nicely, etc., we'll find that our interest in all the materialistic things, money, name and fame and whatever, all these things, it'll just dissolve. And not that you have to fight it off, but you'll just find after a little while you just lost interest. one devotee told us an interesting story a little while ago, actually a few years ago, that before he was a devotee, he was very materialistic, and actually he was very fond of eating meat. Then he became a devotee, and of course, he gave up all those things. He was a devotee. So after some time, after, I don't know, a couple of years or something, he met one of his old friends who he used to eat meat with and do things like that with. And he hadn't seen him since he became a devotee. And the old friend said, "Oh, you're Hare Krishna, you're vegetarian." "Yes, I'm vegetarian." And the old friend said, "Well, how did you give up meat? You were so fond of it." And the devotee said, "Actually, I didn't give up meat. Meat gave me up." And his friend was a little puzzled. And the devotee said, "I was chanting and practicing, and after a little while, I realized, hey, I just forgot about meat. I've got no interest. And I didn't have to somehow struggle to give it up and, battle with the desire. It just dissolved and went away." So this is what happens. This is what happens, and this is what happened with Parikshit. So those three verses then, 2, 3, and 4, are describing his qualification, Parikshit, to hear. And then verse 5, it's still in the same section, the first section of this chapter, verse 1 to verse 5, but now Parikshit explains how Shukadev is qualified to speak. Shukadev's going to speak, Parikshit is going to hear. Each of them has qualification. So we just heard about Parikshit's qualification. So here now in verse 5, Parikshit explains the qualification of Shukadev Goswami. So verse 5, Maharaj Parikshit said, "O learned Brahman, you know everything because you're without material contamination. Therefore, whatever you've spoken to me appears perfectly right. Your speeches are gradually destroying the darkness of my ignorance, for you are narrating the topics of the Lord." That's really beautiful, isn't it? So this is now the qualification, or part of the qualification for speaking transcendental things, for preaching and presenting these things to other people. And it's interesting, Parikshit mentions, he mentions a particular qualification actually, and then the effects, the results of Shukadev having that qualification. He says, "You know everything." So how is it? How is it that Shukadev knows everything? Because you are without material contamination. In other words, Shukadev, he is pure, completely pure, and therefore he knows everything. He can answer any question. He can explain anything to do with Krishna consciousness. How's that? Because he's without material contamination. And how does that work then? How does that work? That someone, if they become pure, suddenly, they just manifest all sorts of knowledge and information and they know so much. That's because Krishna, when Krishna sees that you are engaged purely in his devotional service, Krishna gives you knowledge. You know, there's famous verse in Bhagavad Gita again, 15:15. You know that verse? Savasya chaham hridi sanivishto mata smritya gyanam aponam cha. Those are the first two lines of Bhagavad Gita chapter 15, verse 15. And Lord Krishna is saying, Savasya chaham hridi sanivishto. I'm situated in everyone's hridi, in everyone's heart. And mata smritir jnanam apoanam cha. From me are coming remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. For a devotee, so in other words, for a devotee, Krishna gives knowledge, mata smritya, gives remembrance. Mata smritya, first is smriti, means remembrance. Krishna helps the devotee to remember him. Mata smritya jnanam. Jnanam means knowledge. Krishna gives the devotee knowledge. And apohanam means forgetfulness. Krishna gives the devotee forgetfulness about material life. So, this is Krishna's mercy. You know, for the materialist, Krishna gives them remembrance about, you know, their material lives, what they're doing and what's going on in their lives. He gives them knowledge so they can develop their material lives. And then he gives them forgetfulness about himself, about Krishna. But for the devotees, it's different. Krishna gives remembrance of himself, knowledge of himself, and forgetfulness of anything which is not connected with him, forgetfulness about material existence. So therefore, Parikshit says here in this verse 5, that you know everything because you're without material contamination. Because Shukadev is so engaged in devotional service, hearing and chanting about Krishna and serving Krishna in so many ways. So he's become free from material attachment, and Krishna reveals all these things to him. And therefore one time, one devotee asked Prabhupada, do you know everything? And Srila Prabhupada answered, no, I don't. But Krishna does, and he tells me. So, no, Prabhupada is Prabhupada. But definitely Krishna will help us. There are different degrees. It's not like, you know, you're either on level 0 or level 100. There are different degrees. So gradually as we progress, Krishna gives more knowledge, more understanding, and he gives us also the ability to present the knowledge, the ability to understand more clearly, and he makes all sorts of arrangements for us. Now I see Smita Krishna Prabhu is sitting there looking thoughtful. You don't want me to go on for too long, I take it.
Maharaj, we'll go on till about 10 past and then take some questions.
Okay, so we'll go on for a few more minutes.
So it's 5:02 now.
Okay.
We got to, yeah. Well, I was actually thinking about your point, not the time. So, but generally we'll stop.
All right.
That's about 10 past, and then we'll take some questions.
Yeah.
Thank you much.
Yeah, okay. You know, you see there in the purport, if you've got your Srimad Bhagavatam with you,
Yes,
then
Maharaj.
you'll see that Srila Prabhupada quotes a verse in the purport It's from SU, means Shweta Ashvata Upanishad, and it's chapter 6, verse 23. Yasya deve para bhaktiya, yata deve tata guru, tasyaite katita hyarta, prakashante mahatmana. And here's Prabhupada doesn't exactly give the translation in the purport there of that verse, but elsewhere, Prabhupada gives, of course, excuse me, it's quite a famous verse, and Prabhupada gives the translation. I'll tell you in a sec. So, Yasya deve para bhaktiya, yata deve tata guru. So, first line, one who has faith in the Lord, deve or deva. So one who has faith in the Lord, and then yata deve tata guru, one who similarly has faith in the spiritual master, in the guru. Then tasyaite katita hyarta. For that person, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. Prakashante mahatmana. Prakash of course means light, or in this case, enlightenment. Prakashante is the third person plural Sanskrit. Means they become enlightened, Mahatmanas, so those Mahatmas. So the translation is, unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. It's amazing. It's very amazing, actually, how Krishna reveals things to his devotees. Okay, so that's verse 5. Now, as we said, that's the end of the first section, actually. Setting the scene with some explanation, glorification, you could say, of Parikshit's qualification, Parikshit for being so qualified in his particular ways. So Parikshit became the right person to receive the message. And then Shukadev, he was qualified for speaking. Actually, they're both more or less equally qualified. Prabhupada elsewhere makes interesting and important point that actually Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadev Goswami, they are equally qualified. It's not that one of them is more advanced than the other. I mean, normally it's like that, like the spiritual master is more advanced than the disciple, or the one who is asked to present things is more advanced than those who are there to hear the presentation. But in this case, they're both equally advanced. Prabhupada explains. And it was just because of the circumstances that Shukadev took the role of guru and Parikshit took the role of disciple. Otherwise, if circumstances had been different, Prabhupada explains, Parikshit could just as well have been the one who was explaining things to Shukadev. Anyway, that's sort of by the way. It's an interesting little side point. Okay, so now from verse 6 to verse, I think it's verse 9. Let me just check. 8, 9. Yeah, well, basically. Or you could say 10, actually. Yeah, you could say 10. So from verse 6 to 10, it's a change of theme. And the theme now is that Maharaj Parikshit, he, beginning with verse 6, he wants to, there's certain things he wants to understand, certain information he wants to get about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And like we said and read at the beginning, the title of the chapter is The Process of Creation. So Parikshit, beginning with verse 6, he explains to Shukadev these certain things he wants to find out about Krishna. How does Krishna operate? How does Krishna work in regard to the process of creation? I mean, like we said, we're just setting the scene here. How the Lord actually creates, the actual process, what happens, is not going to be discussed for a little while. But at this point, Parikshit is just going to ask about certain aspects of the process of creation. So, okay, first is verse 6 then. I beg to know from you how the personality of Godhead, by his personal energies, creates these phenomenal universes as they are, which are inconceivable even to the great demigods. It's a big thing, isn't it? How do you create a universe? My gosh. To create, I don't know, a business, just to create a house. It's a whole thing. You got to really know what you're doing. To run a country, you got to really know what you're doing. Otherwise, anyway, things will go wrong. So this is the first, it's like it's a question, or if not exactly a question, it's a request for information. Please explain how the Lord creates. That's verse 6. Then let's go on to verse 7, because there are like 3, either you could say questions, but then not so much phrased as questions, they're more phrased as requests. Kindly describe, this is verse 7, kindly describe how the Supreme Lord, who is all-powerful, engages his different energies and different expansions in maintaining. Now, if you remember the previous verse 6 we just read, he wants to know about how the Lord creates. Here in verse 7, he wants to know how the Lord, through his energies, through his expansions, in whatever ways, how does the Lord maintain? And then, how does he wind up the phenomenal world in the sporting spirit of a player? So this is sort of like 2 requests in one. How does he maintain? How does he destroy? So, arguably, we have encountered three requests. How does the Lord create? How does the Lord maintain? How does the Lord destroy or wind up the material world? You know, an interesting point which Srila Prabhupada made is that of the three, creation, maintenance, and distraction, the most difficult is maintenance. Creation, of course, creation may not be easy too, and distraction may not be easy also, but maintenance is harder. Therefore, because maintenance of the creation of this universe, because maintenance is more difficult, therefore, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, he personally takes charge of the process of maintenance. Whereas Lord Brahma is in charge of creation, Lord Shiva is in charge of distraction, and they're very great persons, but they're not on the level of Lord Vishnu. They're not on the same level because creation and distraction are easier than maintenance. And maintenance requires really being in the mode of goodness, really being clear-headed, really being very, very consistent like that. Otherwise, if you're inconsistent, you won't be able to maintain. You'll look the other way or something like that and drop the ball, if you know what I mean. So Parikshit wants to know how the Lord, either himself personally or through his different energies and or different expansions, how does he do these three things? We want to find out. Therefore, the chapter's called The Process of Creation. And verse 8, O learned Brahman, the transcendental activities of the Lord are all wonderful, and they appear inconceivable, because even great endeavors by many learned scholars have still proved insufficient for understanding them. So this is, well, it's basically more than anything a glorification of the Lord. The Lord is so amazing. He's so amazing that even many learned scholars just can't understand, particularly how the Lord does creation, maintenance, and distraction. Although actually they can't understand him in so many ways. But here, of course, the real theme is the process of creation, and right here, creation, maintenance, and distraction as done, overseen by the Lord. So it's more a glorification that how wonderful the Lord is. You know the story of Narada Muni and the cobbler and the Brahmin. I won't tell you the whole story, but the cobbler was sitting under a banyan tree doing his shoe repair business, and Narada Muni came along and told him, you know what? I was just with the Lord. He was busy putting an elephant through the eye of a needle. And what do you think of that? And the cobbler did not say that an elephant through the eye of a needle, come on, don't pull my leg. The cobbler didn't say that. The cobbler said, oh, that's wonderful. My Lord is just wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that. And Narada asked him, you really believe it? An elephant through the eye of a needle? And the cobbler picked up a banyan seed pod and opened it up. And in it were many seeds, like 100 little seeds. And the cobbler said that each one of these seeds is, by potential, it's a big banyan tree, which is much bigger than an elephant. So my Lord has put, all of these banyan trees into this little seed pod. So for him to put an elephant through the eye of a needle, it's not difficult. So yeah, it's really nice. Because he was a sincere devotee, the Lord gave him the understanding. So anyway, where are we now? That was verse 8, verse 9. And well, it's a glorification more than anything, really. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is one. Whether he alone acts with the modes of material nature, or simultaneously expands in many forms, or expands consecutively to direct the modes of nature. So in other words, even if he appears in many forms, he's still one. This is the Lord. And finally, verse 11, I think we'll just conclude there. Verse 11, it pretty much concludes the section, and then the theme changes. Verse 11, I'm sorry, wait, what am I saying? Verse 10 concludes the section. Kindly clear up all these doubtful inquiries, because you are not only vastly learned in the Vedic literatures and self-realized in transcendence, but are also a great devotee of the Lord, and are therefore as good as the personality of Godhead. Sometimes the great devotees are considered to be like types of manifestations of the Lord, because they're so empowered by the Lord with knowledge and with Krishna conscious capability. So therefore Parikshit says to Shukadev, you can answer these questions because you're empowered by the Lord. You have power like the Lord by the Lord's grace. Hare Krishna. Okay.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. That was such a wonderful absorption for the last hour. And it is certainly very, very beneficial to hear you, and we can see the depth of your Krishna consciousness is obvious in the way you explain, and yet at the same time you haven't, for the purposes of our class, not delved into the very great depths, because it's an overview, and we hope we do get a chance to hear you do systematic verse by verse analysis at some time as well, in more depth. So thank you very much, Maj. Devotees who have questions, please just raise your hand at the bottom of that section. At the bottom of your Zoom, you'll see there's something called reactions. So if you just click on raise your hand, then I'll know who it is that has a question. You do that now. Daksha Mataji. Please. Daksha is from Johannesburg. She's joining us. She's been with us for the large part of this journey. So thank you, Daksha. Your question? Unmute yourself. Raksha.
There we go.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare, Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
Yes, clear.
Hare Krishna. All right. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to the assembled devotees. Maharaj, can I
Haribol.
please ask you a question? But firstly, Haribol, I'd like to thank you for your social media videos and your presentations. Whenever I have time, I listen to them. And when you were here at our Santon Temple, I had logged into your live programs. I'd like to thank you for that, for giving us all your nectar and devotion. And I'd especially like to thank you as well for your presentation on Facebook, and you were on the current situation we are facing here in South Africa. So, and that brought a lot of calm, and that we greatly appreciate that, because you brought us back to Lord Krishna about surrendering, and we must put our faith into the Lord. With all the calamities that we're experiencing in the world, and also what we are seeing here in South Africa. I would also like to say that you reminded us about Kali Yuga, that this is the age of Karma. And you know, your whole mood was one where I could see that you were calm, and that's how we as devotees should be also approaching these situations, and not becoming fearful and frenzied about all this. And yet you said we must also be proactive at the same time. So I thank you for that. I thank you so much for that, because you brought peace within us with your knowledge and your nectar. My question, thank you. My question, Maharaj, is: can you enlighten us about collective karma? Because I don't know, maybe I may be wrong, but this country is experiencing, it could be collective karma. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much. That's my question.
Okay. You know, there are two types of collective karma, you could say. One type is when a group of people get together and do one thing together. You know, it could be a very good thing, it could be a very bad thing, but they're all together, they're all doing it together, so they all get basically the same karma together. So that's a type of collective karma. Then another type of collective karma is when people have, not as a group, but just individually, they've done the same thing, maybe at different times in different places, you know, but they've all done the same thing. So therefore, they are due to get the same reaction. In case of either, well, Prabhupada gives a particular example, actually. In case of either case, where you've got a group doing the same thing together, or just different people, different places doing the same thing, and therefore they get the same karma. Prabhupada, talking about people who do the same bad thing, Prabhupada said that they may all be brought together to fly on the same flight, on the same aeroplane together. And that aeroplane crashes. So they all die in the same way, right at the same moment, basically. So like that. Prabhupada also said that because the Americans are so attached to their barbecues, their bryflace, and, you know, all their meat eating like that, Prabhupada said, therefore, their sons were killed in Vietnam. Or, you know, you get like the big wars, Second World War, First World War, or these types of events basically means that people, one way or the other, they have similar karma in the sense they're all meant to suffer, they're all meant to or die in the same ways, under the same types of circumstances, at the same time or roughly the same time. And this is a type of collective karma. So, here in this country, we all know only too well about the history of apartheid, that there was so much exploitation and abuse. And now it's coming back, isn't it? It's coming back. So anyway, these are some thoughts on the subject of collective karma. Therefore, if we as devotees, if we really practice very seriously, we will create amongst all of the devotee community, we will create a very favorable karmic situation. Actually, it's transcendental, it's even beyond karma. But there's a similarity in that we will create auspiciousness. We'll create auspiciousness at least for ourselves as individuals, also for our families, and for our community of devotees by doing the same things. This will be a sort of collective transcendence. So we should all really try and do that. And ultimately, it will be so effective that we'll be able to influence the whole world. Because Krishna consciousness is like a superior power. We'll be able to influence the whole world. Yes. So I was just reading the other day, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said that when a devotee is born in a family, the devotee delivers that family. And therefore Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said that when devotees speak amongst themselves, they shouldn't really say that, what's your family? What sort of family were you born in? Rather, the devotee should say, what family did you deliver? What family have you delivered by being born in the family? Okay?
Thanks, Maharaj. Devotees, Maharaj has another engagement in a short while. So I'll take one more question. And Shravan Prabhu's hand went up earlier. And there was a question from Sadhu Prabhu as well. But let's see how time goes. Shravan Prabhu, can you please ask your question? Unmute. Okay.
Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to you and Srila Prabhupada. Dear Maharaj, I recently had the great pleasure of completing the Nectar of Devotion and Bhakti Sastri online course with you, and I have one simple question in that regard. So, in the Nectar of Devotion, it is said that a person who writes Vaishnava literature and keeps such literature at home has Lord Narayana always residing in his house. And in many other places, it is written that the Archa Vigraha form of the Lord is none different to the Lord himself, and this can be made out of clay, metal, wood, or paints, and so on. So I'd just like to know, in this digital age that we live in right now, does offering one's obeisances to virtual pictures of deities that simply appear as pixels arranged on a screen and owning and keeping ebooks of Srila Prabhupada's literature have the same effect as a physical, real paraphernalia of the Lord?
Same. The pixel avatars, pixel incarnations. But no, seriously, it's the same. It definitely is. 100%. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj. I think we can address the question from Sadhu. Sunaina, are you able to read that? Because I can't track that question. It's too far up on the chat. There's a question from Sadhu. Sadhu
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna Prabhu, I'll find it for you now. Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all glories to you, dear Gurudev. Thank you for the wonderful class. I really needed to hear this message today. A question. Are there also many Lord Shivas as there are many Lord Brahmas, one for each individual universe? Hare Krishna.
Yes, yes. That's a straight answer. Yes. Every universe has a Lord Shiva. Every universe has a Lord Brahma. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. I know you have another engagement in 4 minutes. So we were extremely absorbed and really extremely grateful for your darshan, your association today, and your kind reciprocation to the request. And we look forward to having you again at some stage. I will be in touch with you, Maharaj, and see what's your availability. And please bestow your mercy upon us by giving us these kinds of lectures again in your association. Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, thank you all very much. Thank you, Smita Krishna Prabhu. It's very nice. And yes, I'll come back again after a little while, if you like. Sure. I'll be happy to.
All glories to you, Maharaj. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
All glories to the assembled devotees. Jai.
Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna. So I will close the Zoom class now, and we can make this available, this recording available to you. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thanks for asking the questions. Hare Krishna.